Have you ever opened a box of old Christmas decorations, smelled that mix of dust and pine, and felt a wave of nostalgia hit you? It's comforting, right? It's the smell of tradition. But sometimes things get left in attics for a reason. Sometimes the things we dig up aren't waiting to be remembered. They're waiting to be fed. Welcome back to Campo Creeps. If you're new here, pull up a log by the fire, lock your doors, dim the lights, and maybe, just for tonight, don't look too closely at that beautifully decorated tree in the corner. Do me a quick favor and gently tap the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell so you don't miss out on the nightmares we serve up weekly. Now, let's get into today's story. This story happened just a couple of years ago to the Miller family, Arthur, Sarah, and their 16-year-old daughter, Chloe. Now, the Millers were going through a rough patch. It was mid-December, and the holiday spirit in their house was running on fumes. Arthur had just been laid off from a project manager job he'd held for a decade. He hadn't told Chloe yet, scared of ruining her Christmas, so he was carrying around this massive, suffocating secret. Sarah was working double shifts at the hospital to compensate, walking around in a state of permanent exhaustion. And Chloe, she was 16. She was currently allergic to anything her parents said or did, vibrating with that specific brand of teenage angst that makes every family dinner feel like a hostage negotiation. So, the vibe in the house was tense. It was quiet. It was sad. 3 days before Christmas, Arthur decided he needed to snap them out of it. He was going to force some cheer into the house if it killed him. He climbed up into the unfinished attic to drag down the plastic tree and the boxes of generic ornaments. While he was up there, dodging cobwebs and trying not to put his foot through the drywall ceiling, he spotted something tucked way back in the eaves, behind the chimney stack. It was a wooden crate, nailed shut. It didn't look like their usual plastic bins. It looked old. Like, really old. Arthur, being a guy who needed a win, pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside there was no padding, no tissue paper, just a dense, heavy mass of tinsel. But this wasn't the cheap, scratchy stuff you buy at Target that sheds everywhere. This stuff was breathtaking. It was incredibly fine, like spun glass or spider silk, and it had an iridescence to it that didn't seem natural. When Arthur held a handful up to the bare attic light bulb, it didn't just reflect the light, it seemed to fracture it. It shimmered with colors Arthur wasn't sure had names. Deep oily purples, electric greens, a shivering kind of silver that almost hurt to look at. He thought, jackpot, this was going to save Christmas. He brought it downstairs, and even Chloe, who was sitting on the couch aggressively scrolling TikTok, looked up. Even exhausted Sarah managed a genuine, wow. They spent the next 2 hours decorating the tree. And here's the first weird thing. They didn't fight, not once. Usually, decorating involved Arthur untangling lights and swearing under his breath, Sarah micromanaging ornament placement, and Chloe sighing loudly every 30 seconds. But tonight, it was peaceful. It was nice. As they draped that strange, shimmering tinsel over the branches, it seemed to cling perfectly to the needles. It flowed like water, draping the plastic tree in what looked like frozen starlight. By the time they plugged the lights in, the Miller living room looked magical, and more importantly, they felt magical. Arthur forgot about the layoff. Sarah's back stopped aching. Chloe actually hugged her dad before going to bed without being asked. They all went to sleep that night feeling a profound, heavy sense of contentment. It was the best sleep they'd had in months. The next morning, December the 23rd, the strangeness started to creep in. Sarah was the first one up. She walked into the living room with her coffee and stopped dead. The tree was glowing, even though the lights weren't plugged in yet. The tinsel seemed to be pulsing with its own faint, cold light. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that there was a single, long strand of that iridescent tinsel stretching from the top of the tree, across the ceiling and looping around the frame of their wedding photo above the mantelpiece. Sarah stared at it. She knew, logically, that tinsel doesn't move. It doesn't grow. Yet, as she looked at it, a wave of intense, sugary warmth washed over her. Her concern just evaporated. It looks pretty. A thought surfaced in mind. It wasn't quite her own voice, but it was close enough. It's just festive. She smiled, a wide, vacant smile, and went to make breakfast. By lunchtime, Arthur noticed it too. He was sitting at the dining table, looking at his laptop. A rejection email for a job he really wanted had just come through. He should have been crushed. He should have been panicked. Instead, he felt a bizarre buzzing in his head, like static fuzz wrapping around his brain. The panic couldn't land. He looked up and saw thin, shimmering threads of tinsel weaving around the legs of the dining chairs, creeping along the baseboards like glowing ivy. He tried to feel worried about the job. He physically tried to furrow his brow. He couldn't. His face muscles wouldn't obey. Instead, his mouth stretched into a grin that felt tight and unnatural. "Oh, well," he said aloud to an empty room, his voice sounding flat and cheery. "More time for family." Chloe was the one who truly realized something was horrific, even if she couldn't stop it. She was in her room, trying to be mad that her mom had shrunk her favorite hoodie in the wash. She wanted to stomp downstairs and start a fight. It was her go-to move. But when she stood up to leave her room, she couldn't open the door. She looked down at the knob. It was wrapped tight in a cocoon of iridescent threads. They were pulsing softly. Chloe grabbed the knob and yanked. It wouldn't budge. But worse than that, as soon as her skin touched the tinsel, a massive dose of dopamine hit her brain. It was dizzying. All her anger just dissolved into a soupy, sickening pleasantness. She let go of the knob, giggled, and sat back down on her bed, staring blankly at the wall, feeling wonderful and utterly terrified at the same time. By Christmas Eve, the Miller house was a tomb of enforced joy. The tinsel was everywhere. It had webbed across the ceilings, draped over doorways, and wound itself around furniture. The air in the house was freezing cold, yet smelled sickly sweet, like ozone and burnt sugar. Arthur, Sarah, and Chloe were sitting in the living room. They weren't doing anything, just sitting. They were arranged on the couches like dolls. The tinsel was on them now. Fine. Shimmering threads had woven into Sarah's hair, making her look like an ice queen. Strands were wrapped around Arthur's wrists, pinning his hands to his knees. Chloe looked like she was caught in a glistening spider web, shining threads connecting her shoulders to the back of the armchair. They were all smiling, that same wide, rigid smile. Their jaws ached constantly. Their eyes were wide and watering, screaming for help, but their mouths could only curve upward. Arthur's mind was screaming inside its cage of happiness. He knew, with a sudden, horrifying clarity, what was happening. This wasn't decoration. It was a parasite. It had been starving in that attic for decades. And the Millers, with their stress, their secrets, their teenage angst, they were an all-you-can-eat buffet of negative energy. But the parasite didn't eat the negativity to destroy it. It ate the negativity to fuel its own growth, and in return, it pumped its hosts full of this paralyzing, artificial bliss. It was preserving them. It was turning them into perfect, eternal Christmas decorations. A happy family under the tree, forever frozen in a rictus of joy. Chloe, trapped in her armchair, watched a thick strand of tinsel slowly lower itself from the ceiling toward her face. It moved with deliberate, serpentine grace. It was aiming for her eyes. The sheer terror of it managed to crack the facade for a microsecond. A tear leaked out of her eye and rolled down her cheek. When the tear hit a strand of tinsel crossing her chest, the strand hissed. The light in it sputtered and turned a dull, dead gray for just a moment. Chloe saw it, and she understood. The happiness wasn't just a cage. It was the parasite's defense mechanism. It couldn't survive raw, unfiltered negativity. She had to feel bad. She had to feel terrible. Right now. She looked across at her dad, sitting there grinning like an idiot while tears streamed down his face. Chloe fought past the dopamine haze. She grabbed onto the most painful thing she could find in her mind. "Dad," she choked out. Her voice was rusty, cracking under the strain of the forced smile. Arthur's eyes swiveled toward her. "Dad, stop smiling. You have to stop. It hates being sad." She turned to her mom. "Mom, tell him the truth. Tell him you hate that he lost his job. Tell him you're tired of carrying us." Sarah's smile wavered. The tinsel around her hair tightened, pulling her head back, trying to shut her up. Chloe looked at her dad and she went for the jugular. She had to break his heart to save his life. "Dad, you're a failure," she screamed, pouring every ounce of teenage venom she had into the words. "You lost your job right before Christmas and you didn't even tell me. You're a liar and I hate you for it." The words hit Arthur like physical blows. The artificial happiness shattered against the reality of his daughter's disappointment. The grief, the shame, the terror of being broke, it all came rushing back like a tidal wave. He didn't just feel it, he embraced it. He let out a guttural roar of pure misery. "I am terrified," Arthur yelled, his jaw finally snapping free of the grin. "I don't know how we're going to pay the mortgage in January. I failed you guys." He started sobbing. Ugly, messy, wrenching sobs. The effect was instantaneous. Throughout the room, the iridescent light turned a sickly, bruised purple. A high-pitched shriek filled the air, a sound just on the edge of human hearing, like glass grinding on bone. The tinsel writhed. The strands binding their wrists and hair whipped back, burning their skin with sudden, intense cold. "Sarah, do it!" Arthur yelled through his tears. "Feel it!" Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. She focused on every double shift, every moment of loneliness, every resentment she'd swallowed for 20 years. "I hate this house," she screamed, smashing a tinsel-covered vase on the floor. "I'm so tired of pretending everything is okay." The three of them sat there, screaming their pain and anger into the room. It was a cacophony of misery. And the parasite couldn't take it. It was poison. The shrieking noise reached a crescendo, windows cracking under the pressure. The beautiful, shimmering, frozen starlight on the tree suddenly flashed a blinding dead white, and then turned to dust. Every strand in the house, on the ceiling, the doors, the furniture, their bodies, disintegrated instantly into fine gray ash that rained down on everything. The lights on the tree blew out. The house plunged into silence and darkness, save for the streetlights outside. Arthur, Sarah, and Chloe sat in the dark living room, covered in gray dust, shivering, sobbing, and miserable. And they had never felt better in their entire lives. They were broke, they were exhausted, and they were angry at each other. But they were real, and they were free. They spent Christmas Day cleaning gray ash out of the carpet. They didn't have a tree. They didn't exchange presents. They just ordered Chinese food and argued about whose turn it was to vacuum. It was the best Christmas they ever had. But here's the thing that sticks with me. Arthur burned the wooden crate. He burned every scrap of the dust they vacuumed up. But a few months later, in the spring, Chloe was looking through her closet for a light jacket. She found that hoodie her mom had shrunk. Tucked into the hood, glistening in the dark of the closet, was a single, tiny thread of iridescent tinsel. And it was pulsing, just barely, waiting for a happy thought. So, folks, when the holidays roll around and you feel that pressure to be happy, that demand that everything must be perfect, Maybe let yourself be a little grumpy. Let yourself feel sad if you need to, because you never know what might be hiding in the attic, waiting for a family that's just a little too desperate for a perfect Christmas. If you like that story, smash that like button until it shatters into festive dust. Subscribe to Campo Creeps and hit the bell so you're notified every time we drop a new nightmare. Until next time, creeps out.